Hello YouTube, wanted to make a quick video to show you what I had to go through to get my F-150 running again after it quit on me. It wouldn't start. It would crank, but it wouldn't start. A little backstory, mine is a 92 F-150 with a 300 4.9 liter 6-cylinder straight 6. Good truck, although this particular one I've only had for a few months. Previous owner didn't do a whole lot of preventative maintenance, so I've been going through fixing some things as needed, catching up on the repairs and maintenance that he should have done. But about a month and a half ago, early December of 2014, took a load of dirt over to a friend's house, and after we were done, I was hosing out the back, got in it to start it up and drive home. It started and died, and I wasn't able to get it started again for about a month and a half. In my particular case, I didn't know it meant anything at the time, but when I got in to start it, I did notice a faint, what I thought was maybe an antifreeze smell. You know, that kind of unique smell that antifreeze has. In any case, found out later what that probably was, and I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, when mine wouldn't start, obviously needed to figure out what's the problem. Is it not getting fuel? Is it not getting spark? And had a buddy check it out, determined it wasn't getting spark. So tried a few different things. For starters here, let's go ahead and pop the hood. It's going to be interesting to do one-handed, and everything's icy, of course. Alright, as you can see, my engine compartment's kind of dirty, but bear with me here. Alright, so not getting spark, few things we thought to check. One of the things that I already had a replacement for, just hadn't gotten around to, was the ignition coil, which is right down here. You can see it right there. Since I already had one and was planning to put a new one in anyway, I replaced that. That did not fix the problem. It would still crank, but wouldn't start. So we decided, I took out the ignition control module, which on my year of truck, again this is a 92, the ignition control module is mounted here on the driver's side fender. It's the gray computer chip there with the wires going in, attached to the heat sink. I took that out and took it to AutoZone and had them test it. It tested good. Now, I have heard other people say that they don't trust AutoZone, so if you have reason to believe it's the ignition control module, the ICM, of course you can get a second opinion, or you could try replacing it anyway. In my case, it tested good and I believed them. Now, there are some older trucks where the ICM is mounted to the distributor, which is down here, but not in mine. So depending on the age of yours, some of the 80s models and older than that even, it might be down there. Anyway, so didn't get it running with a new coil, didn't get it running by replacing the ICM because mine was good. A little backstory, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I ended up deciding to have it towed home by AAA. In the process, they broke the steering gear, long story. Anyway, took it to the shop to have that replaced. By the way, AAA took care of me and got that replaced. But while I had it at the shop, I asked them to check it out, and they said it's not getting fuel. They couldn't tell me exactly why without digging deeper, and I didn't want to pay for them to dig deeper. But now I had conflicting stories. One said not getting spark, another said not getting fuel, which really made it confusing. I personally started researching online. If you have one of these trucks, I recommend you do some research online. I'm a big fan of Ford truck enthusiast, ford-trucks.com. Check it out if you're not already on there. A lot of good guys with a lot of knowledge on there, and I owe my results in particular to a member on Ford Truck Enthusiast Forum called Sub Ford. Great guy, gave me some tips, and I'm going to give you some of those tips as well. The first thing I was told to check was to see if I was getting power to the inertia switch. On these trucks, the inertia switch is located in the passenger side footwell. Pardon the mess in my truck. It's kind of where I'm leaving all my tools and stuff while I'm working on it. But the inertia switch is right here in the kick panel. This is it right here. And there's a bundle of wires going in, and basically you need to take a test light. Now this is the kind I used, and there's a reason I bought this one, and that's because it can be done one-handed with one person. Basically you have to probe the green wire with the yellow stripe, you can see it there, with your test light, and of course the other end of the test light is on your ground. And then while you have that green-yellow wire probed, you need to turn the ignition key to the run position. And then if the inertia switch is getting power, which it should be for, I believe it's 2 seconds after turning the key on, of course your tester would light up for a few seconds and then go out. Now in my case it was not. When I would turn the ignition key on, I didn't get anything at all. And I verified that my tester was working by touching it directly to the battery. I should also tell you that when I was turning the ignition key on, I was not hearing the fuel pumps. There was a brief click, but no pumps. This is a dual tank truck. Tried it on both tanks. Neither one of them was coming on. And double checked the inertia switch that it wasn't tripped, and it wasn't. It was fine. So the next thing we did was came over here. Ford put in a computer plug-in, a test connection in the engine compartment. If I can get it open with one hand here. There we go. This is the orientation you want to look at the test plug, with the flat side down. And basically what you want to do is jumper pins 2 and 6. Pin 2 is the top right one right here, and pin 6 is the bottom right right here. And the easiest way I found to jumper those two pins together is to take a paper clip like this and unbend it so that you have two ends like that. And basically, and this is difficult to do one-handed, but basically you're wanting to stick the one end of the paper clip into pin 2 and the other into pin 6 like this, and basically creating a connection between the two. Alright, then you go back into the engine compartment, or excuse me, back into the cab, probe the green and yellow wire on the inertia switch again, turn the ignition key to the run position, and instead of 2 seconds, basically you should get constant on with your test light. And I did that, and I did get power there at the green and yellow light, green and yellow wire. And I also heard the fuel pump kick on. Tried switching tanks, that fuel pump came on as well. So the fuel pump basically comes on and runs constantly. It doesn't shut off. It's not just priming, it comes on and stays on. Tried cranking and still wasn't getting a start. So back to the drawing boards. But that did tell us something. It told us basically fuel pumps still work, so good. I don't have to yank my bed, replace fuel pumps or anything like that. All of that's still good. My connections to the inertia switch are still good. So what it did mean was I need to check a few more things. First of all, over here next to the battery is a ground. You need to check that ground and make sure it's nice and tight. Of course, if it wasn't, you'd want to tighten that up, but mine was fine. And so pretty much that meant one other thing, and that is the ECM, or the engine control module, basically the engine controlling computer, was likely bad. Now back to my story of the day that this thing stopped starting, and that smell I mentioned earlier on, that was likely maybe some capacitors in the computer letting go. Basically, the board was fried. Now the ECM is way down here. It is this right here. There's two bundles of wires going in. It's this right one right here. ECM controls a lot of things, but among them, it controls your fuel and your spark. Hence, both people were right. This truck was not getting fuel or spark. So I ordered a new, well, not a new computer, I ordered a refurb or remanufactured computer, and that came a few days later. It's not terribly difficult to replace the ECM, but I recommend getting a second set of hands if you have some available. It can probably be done with one person, but basically what you have to do is, first of all, you'll see right in the middle of this bundle of wires, there is a bolt. You need to completely ratchet that out, and as you do, this bundle of wires will start backing itself out. You don't have to wiggle it out or anything like that. Unscrewing that will start to back that out. And then you can see there's a bolt up here. It's harder to see, but there is another one down underneath this bundle of wires down there as well. You'll unbolt both of those. Now the top one's obviously very easy to get to. The lower one can be gotten to from above, but it's not real easy to get to. Now before you can actually take that ECM out, you also need to come underneath here and loosen up the plastic fender lining right here. Just a series of bolts. There's a few right here that you can see. And basically I took out all of the bolts that hold it in up to about the middle of the fender, right about the high point. There's also one up underneath here, so don't forget that. And there's one on the bottom underneath your front corner there of the cab. Excuse me. So undo those and peel back your plastic inner fender lining, and that will expose the firewall and give you cleaner access to the lower bolt and ultimately to the computer itself. So after you have backed out the connection, unbolted those two, the top and bottom bolts there, and then pulled back the fender lining, the computer itself will actually just slide right up out of the firewall. Now, the reason I recommended having a second person to help you out is this bundle of wires here, this wire loom, actually kind of gets in the way as well, as does of course the fender. So you have to pull the fender lining down, and you have to pull this wire loom up, and you have to pull the computer out. So really you're pulling things three different ways, hence why it's very helpful to have a second set of hands. And that lower bolt, if I didn't mention it already, will be a lot easier to get from inside the fender once you've peeled back the lining. Once you've got the old one out, it's plug and play. You will take the new computer and slide it in. I recommend before sliding it in there though, just go ahead and reconnect your wire loom, your bundles there. Screw that bolt into it before you slide it into the firewall. Rehook up your battery. Of course, you should definitely unhook the negative on your battery before you go too far. But go ahead and plug it in and see if your truck will start before you go to all the trouble of reinstalling it. In my case, it did. Fired right up, ran perfectly. So I unhooked the battery, unhooked the computer, put it all back in. Easiest way to get the computer in is from underneath in the fender well, and slide it in from the bottom. Again, using that second set of hands, your helper, and put everything back. The installation is the reverse of taking the old one out. So in my case, that is what it took to get my truck started again. It's not that way for everybody, but when I was researching this, I did not find any initial research that led me to think about the ECM. All of my original research was indicating that it was bad fuel pumps, bad ignition control module, ICM, bad ignition coil, possibly a problem with the distributor, all sorts of things that were suggested long before the computer ever came up. So I wanted to make this video so that if you're having this problem, it gives you something else to test and try out. Hope this helps. Feel free to leave some comments or questions about my experience, and if you're working on getting your truck started again, good luck to you. See y'all later.